Hey everyone, I am Nitij, and this is the third part of the best practices video series on jQuery. And in this video, I am going to talk about these four best practices that we can follow whenever we are writing jQuery code. The first one is unobtrusive JavaScript, and it simply means that we should always try to separate the HTML content from the JavaScript or jQuery code. So, for an example, let's say that if we have an anchor link with an empty href, and we have to use the anchor link to add a product to a cart or to the cart. So the simplest way to do this is to simply set the on click attribute and call some JavaScript code from this attribute. And for an example, I'm simply going to call a JavaScript function, and in this function I'm going to send in the value of the ID of the product as an argument. So this code is not very good because in this we are mixing up HTML and JavaScript. So unless we are bound with some kind of framework requirement like Angular, in which we have to absolutely use the code or the business logic inside the DOM elements, we should not try to do this in normal scenarios. So instead of having the JavaScript or jQuery code being executed from inside the onClick attribute, what we should do is we should simply first identify this link with an attribute. And for simplicity, I'm simply going to name this attribute as add to cart, and then we can add another attribute to store the ID value inside the attribute, because most of the times in in e-commerce applications, the web page contents are generated using a template, and the, these values are simply going to be set from the data source. Now in the code, what we can do is we can simply find this anchor link using the attribute selector. So we are going to find all the anchors having this data add to cart attribute, and then we simply have to set the click event, and we can wire up this event with an anonymous function or with a named function, which simply depends on our preference. Now inside this function I'm going to raise a get call using $.get, and in this get I am simply going to send in the value of this ID along with the URL. So we can do that by simply first encapsulating the or creating a jQuery object uh, out of the event target, which should be the anchor itself. And then we can use the attr function to get the value of the attribute data hyphen id, and that's it. So this code is pretty simple, and it is also not polluting the HTML structure of our web page, and this code is always preferable over the one in which we are writing the code inside the element itself. So the code when written inside the element is harder to debug, and it is harder to change, and it is always not very easy to find bugs in such kind of code. So this was the unobtrusive JavaScript, or you can also call it unobtrusive jQuery. So the second one is element creation. So we can use jQuery to create new HTML DOM elements, and the simplest way to do it is, for an example, I want to create a div, and to do that I can simply send in the HTML text as an argument inside the dollar function. So there is a div, and along with that I also want to provide the class information. So let's name it div class, and then I also want to, I don't know, send some set some attribute values like we did with the anchor, and let's also add another attribute to make things more complex. So I'm going to name this attribute as, let's call it data enabled, which could simply be used to enable or disable the div contents. Now this statement is going to create a new div, and the reference of this div is going to be fetched inside this variable. But there is a better way to do it, and that way is to first use jQuery to create a div, and then use the jQuery chaining to set all the different kinds of stuff that we need to set. So we can set the class, and then we can set the attributes and their values. So there goes the data ID along with its value, and we also have another attribute which is data enabled along with a false value. So this second approach is going to be faster than this first one, because in the first one the jQuery code has to first parse this entire text, and then it is going to separate all the different entities and attributes. Like it is first going to check the type of the element, and then it is going to create a list of all the attributes along with their values, and then it is simply going to iterate over all the attributes, and after that it will add the attributes to the element. But in this code we are directly executing this code, and the parsing of this text is going to be omitted. Now for any single use, this code is not going to be an issue, but in code areas, when we are calling such kind of code multiple times over different user requests, then it is going to hit the application performance. So this is the second best practice that we can follow. The third one is use inexpensive selectors, which is pretty obvious, because we should always write selectors which are not very expensive in nature, because when we are using a lot of such kind of expensive selectors, then performance is going to be the performance is going to go down. So for an example, let's take the example of this anchor, and the best selector is the ID selector, but there are some instances when we cannot use the ID selector, uh, like in this one, when we have several such elements and we have to do something similar with all of them, then we have to select all the elements based on some kind of criteria. So let's suppose that actually it will be dollar anchor, and then I'm simply going to copy this entire thing. But this code can also be improved. So what people normally do is they don't even use the name of the element which we have to find. They simply put the name of the attribute, and then the jQuery then has to search in the entire DOM tree to find this element. But the better way is to first tell the jQuery that which element it needs to be searching, and then inside those elements it is going to search for the elements with this attribute. And if the page is very large, then we can also specify a parent. So for an example, we can have a parent, and then we can first find the parent, and then after that we can find all the elements inside the parent. So what we can do is we can simply first find the parent, and then we can find the elements inside the parent. Alright, so that was the third best practice. The last one is caching of a scope. So uh, in functions which are often used as events, So let's suppose that we have a function which is being used as a which is being bind with the click event of any element. Then uh, I have seen people, creating the jQuery object out of the this keyword to do a variety of different stuff. Like let's say we have to get the value of several attributes. So what people do is they create the jQuery object out of the current scope multiple times. Instead of caching the current scope, and I'm just going to repeat this entire thing like multiple times. So instead of always creating a jQuery object out of the current scope, we should first cache the scope, the current scope, and then we can simply use this cached variable in different lines. And this code is going to be faster because jQuery is not going to again parse the entire DOM element and then create the object structure out of it. So these were the four best practices, and I hope that you will find this video informative. And if you have any questions or comments, then please use the comment section. And if you want to if you want to get the latest news about more videos or about new videos, then please subscribe to this channel. And thank you for watching this video. Have a nice day.